Good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Patmos, and it is March 24th. And big news today: Dr. Robert Malone has resigned abruptly as vice chair of the Center for Disease Control Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. Now, this is a very, very big story because of who Dr. Malone is. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Malone is a doctor who when he was a student, participated in research on messenger or on transfecting RNA, and he was involved in the first study that ever showed that messenger RNA could be transfected into mammalian cells and be taken up and express protein synthesis. This was a major breakthrough, and he was one of a team of people who was involved in that research. He was the student working in the lab at that time under the direction of Dr. Verma and Dr. Feldner. That was very important research, and nothing I'm about to say should be interpreted as diminishing his role in that research. He clearly participated in important research when he was a student. Well, he then went on to conduct his career and um, was not very well known until COVID came along, and he came out early on in 2020 and claimed on the Rogan show that he had invented the DNA and RNA vaccines, and then later changed that to inventing the technology behind the vaccines, and that it was all his idea, and that these vaccines were bad. And he was the one who started the basically kind of got the ball rolling as an anti messenger RNA vaccine anti vaxxer. And he's been influencing public policy in the United States and around the world very significantly. He is, in my estimation, probably the most influential voice on messenger RNA vaccine technology, even more so than the two who won the Nobel Prize. When the layperson talks about RNA vaccines, they think of Robert Malone. He has crafted himself into that person. In fact, he describes himself as the most knowledgeable person in the world when it comes to RNA vaccine technology. Well, he went on to be appointed by Robert Kennedy to the Center for Disease Control Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, where he served as vice chair. That's an extremely important committee because that's the committee that comes up with recommendations on what we should do with various vaccines. And Robert Kennedy fired all the previous committee members, appointed a whole bunch more, including Dr. Malone, who he named as vice chair. And that committee has met twice and issued some really controversial, really awful decisions, like recommending that neonates not be given routinely hepatitis B vaccination. Just stuff that, no credentialed infectious disease doctor could ever get behind. Well, those recommendations met with such anger from physicians that a group of six major medical organizations, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Family Physicians, the American College of Physicians, the American Public Health Association, and others, filed a lawsuit in federal court to block the CDC ACIP's recommendations from being put into uh, from being adopted. The lawsuit was filed against Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert Kennedy, uh, and also NIH Chair Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and FDA Director Dr. Marty Makary. And in that ruling came out from that proceeding. The judge's ruling came out last Friday, a week ago, Friday, and the judge Brian Murphy gave a stunning decision. He said that these recommendations from the Centers for Disease Control ACIP committee must be ignored. He put a stay on those. In other words, they cannot be officially implemented. They're put in a corner and cannot be used. Further, he said that the committee, the ACIP committee, was appointed incorrectly in violation of the law, that the members of the committee were not vetted properly. They didn't go through the proper process of posting a position and collecting resumes and evaluating candidates. They just basically took 17 people, including Malone, and stuck them in this role without the proper vetting of their credentials and so forth. And then the other conclusion that the judge came to, Judge Brian Murphy, concluded, quote unquote, that the entire committee is distinctly unqualified, quote unquote. And he specifically cited and mentioned Dr. Robert Malone as lacking qualifications and experience. Well, I can imagine that would, really tick Dr. Malone off, and it did. He has been all over social media venting about this, and I certainly understand how he must feel to have a judge say that you lack qualifications when you think you're the most knowledgeable person in the world. Has to be pretty upsetting. Well, here's where it all fell apart for Dr. Malone. He wrote an email to other members of the ACIP stating that incorrectly that the judge had disbanded the ACIP. He did not. If you read the judge's decision, he said the ACIP committee can't meet in February, but they can continue to meet. And he didn't say that the ACIP committee was disbanded at all. He said they're improperly impaneled and left it up to Secretary Kennedy to figure out how to deal with that. He has to go back and reconstitute the ACIP. Well, Dr. Malone got really steamed about this, and he wrote an email to all his colleagues on the ACIP stating that Dr. Milhone told him after a conversation with Dr. Bhattacharya that the court dissolved the ACIP, and Malone went crazy about that. It really blew his mind, and he in his email he made some very disparaging comments about Health and Human Services and about certain individuals at Health and Human Services, whom he said he's tired of their incompetence. And when he was questioned about this by the Wall Street Journal, he admitted to the email, and he also admitted to the fact that he said very unflattering things about certain individuals at HHS, stating that they were basically full of, you know what. Anyhow, that really blew up because it turned out that that's not what the judge said. It was a complete miscommunication. Malone initially refused to walk it back and then walked it back and said, okay, it was a miscommunication, but he blamed it on everybody else, not himself. And has been really venting a lot about the fact that he was called by the judge to lack qualifications and experience. So today he quit the ACIP. He basically said, as reported in the New York Times, he basically said that he doesn't have time for this. It's a waste of time. He's got uncompensated hours involved, and he's just got better things to do. And so he is quitting. I suppose that's, a plausible reason to quit, but I think there's another reason. And that is that for the first time now since Dr. Malone rose to fame on the Rogan show, his CV is actually being looked at carefully. And the judge looked at it carefully and concluded that he doesn't have the proper qualifications and experience. So Malone feels otherwise. So if there's going to be some further legal review of his CV in a court of law, it's going to mean that his CV is finally going to be put under the scrutiny and the light of fact checking. And for those of you who have followed my post, I fact check resumes. It's what I've done for 40 years as a physician executive, is review resumes. And I have fact checked many resumes, and including Dr. Malone's. And I think there's a lot of questionable content on there. And that will now all be exposed in court. So I think that Dr. Malone left probably out of frustration, and I'm speculating that he probably left because he doesn't want to have his CV dissected in public in a court of law, line by line, claim by claim, because that's probably going to be embarrassing for him. So I think he's choosing to cut and run. So anyhow, I feel bad for him as a person. I'm sure, upsetting for him. But I think overall, it's good for the country and good for the CDC and for vaccine policy not to have someone on the ACIP who has such a deep-seated, long-standing bias against messenger RNA vaccines. And the reasons for that are a whole nother video. Why he's so anti messenger RNA vaccine, given the fact that he claims he invented it. So, in any case, adieu to Dr. Malone. He's the departures now from the Kennedy team. Dr. Prasad has left. Dr. Abraham has left. Now Dr. Malone has left. So, kind of the depart. Dr. Means as Attorney General is stalled now. So, his physician team is taking a beating, and many are leaving and getting stalled. And I think it's all for a reason. I think there really is an issue with qualifications and experience and having the right credentials for this kind of work. So, anyhow, that's my video for today, and I thought you might find it interesting. Bye, Bob.